Piece of English welcomes you.
Oliver Twist, Chapter 1. It was late at night in a town in England during the Industrial Revolution. At this time, most English towns needed people to work in the factories that were beginning to open all over the country. Many people came to the towns to find work, but they were often so poor that they could not buy enough to eat, and they had nowhere to sleep. So they went to the workhouses, where at least they had a bed and some sort of food. In one such workhouse, an old nurse and a doctor were working in a small, dark room looking at a baby boy that had just been born. The baby found it difficult to breathe. They did not know if he would live. "What's the mother's name?" the doctor asked the nurse. "I don't know. She arrived at the workhouse last night. She was ill and weak when she came." When the baby cried, the mother said weakly, "Can I see my new baby?" The nurse picked up the tiny boy, and the mother saw him for the first time. She kissed him gently on the cheek and smiled. Then the mother died. "Poor woman, she was so beautiful. We'll never know who she was," said the nurse. Then the baby was called Oliver Twist. He was sent to live with other orphans in an old house nearby. The orphans were all the children of parents who had been destitute. A woman called Mrs. Mann was given a little money to look after the orphans, but she decided that she needed some of this money for herself. For this reason, the boys never had enough food. On his 9th birthday, Oliver was a small, weak child. He had spent all his life in the old building with Mrs. Mann, who was no kinder to Oliver than she was to the other orphans. Oliver did not go to school, and he did not know the world outside. One day, an important man called Mr. Bumble visited Mrs. Mann. Mr. Bumble was an official from the workhouse, where the older children from poor families were big enough to work for their food. "Now Oliver's 9, you don't need to look after him. He is old enough to work for us in the workhouse," Mr. Bumble told Mrs. Mann. Oliver was not sad to leave Mrs. Mann, but he was sad to leave his friends and the only home he had ever known. He felt wretched as the door to the house was closed behind him. "Why are you crying? You're very lucky to work here. We'll give you food and a bed for nothing," the managers of the workhouse told Oliver when he arrived. The workhouse was a large, cold building. Oliver was introduced to the other boys, who were all as thin and weak as he was. They wore old clothes that were too big for them. Oliver worked hard at the workhouse with these boys and quickly realized that his life was not going to become any easier. His bed was very uncomfortable, and the food was never enough. All they ate was a thin soup. The boys he worked with were always hungry. After a few months, they were all so close to starving that they made a plan. They decided they must have more food, and they chose Oliver to ask for it. That evening, in the big, cold hall, the boys finished eating their usual thin soup. Then Oliver stood up and walked to the master who gave them their food and asked him, "Please, sir, I want some more." The master was furious. No one had ever asked for more before. And he shouted, "What did you say?" There was now silence in the big room. "Please, sir, I want some more," Oliver repeated. The master angrily took Oliver's arm and immediately led him to the managers of the workhouse. He told them what Oliver had said, and they said if he is not happy with our generosity, he must leave. Then they decided to lock Oliver in a room and put a message on the door of the workhouse. It said that the workhouse would give £5 to anyone who could take the boy away from them. For weeks, Oliver stayed in the cold, dark room. He cried himself to sleep each night, then woke up each morning and began to cry again. He had never felt so alone. He was only taken from the room when it was time to eat. Mr. Bumble did not want any of the other boys to ask for more food, so while they were eating, Mr. Bumble made Oliver stand in front of them, then he beat Oliver. This happened every day until a man called Mr. Sowerberry read the message on the workhouse gate. Mr. Sowerberry, the coffin maker, decided that he needed an apprentice and told Mr. Bumble that he could take Oliver Twist. A new chapter in the boy's life was about to start. The next day, Mr. Bumble took Oliver from the workhouse and walked with him to Mr. Sowerberry's house. As they were walking down the street, Mr. Bumble was surprised to see that Oliver was crying. So he asked him, "Why are you crying? You should be happy to have the opportunity to work with someone like Mr. Sowerberry." Oliver replied, "I'll be a good boy, but I have no—" He kept his words. So Mr. Bumble asked him, "You have no what?" "I have no friends," said Oliver quietly. Mr. Bumble was not interested in Oliver's feelings. They continued to Mr. Sowerberry's house, but when Mr. Sowerberry saw him, he was not very happy and complained, "He's very small, Mr. Bumble." Mr. Bumble answered, "He is small, but he'll grow." Then he took Oliver downstairs and gave him some old food that they had not eaten. Oliver was alone in a strange, dark room surrounded by unfinished coffins. It was not much better than the room he had slept in at the workhouse. It was not easy for him to sleep. The next morning, Oliver woke up to the sound of someone kicking the shop door. Oliver opened it and saw a tall boy with a red nose eating some bread. "Hello, I'm Noah Claypole," he continued, walking into the shop as if he lived there. And he added, "I help Mr. Sowerberry. You do what I say, workhouse boy. Now open the shutters." Then giving Oliver a small kick. Mrs. Sowerberry called and asked Noah to sit by the fire to have some breakfast. She gave Oliver a little bread and told him to eat it down below. It was freezing cold there. "Why can't I have a good breakfast like Noah?" Oliver asked, but there was no one to hear him. For the next few months, Oliver worked with Mr. Sowerberry. He did not like the work, but Mr. Sowerberry seemed pleased with him, and of course this does not please Noah. One day after work, the two boys were alone in the shop. Noah asked him, "What happened to your mother, workhouse boy?" Oliver said quietly, "The nurse said she died of a broken heart." But Noah laughed and said, "I heard she died in the workhouse because she was no good at anything." "What did you say?" cried Oliver, feeling both ashamed and angry. Noah cried unkindly, "I heard if she hadn't died, they would have punished her." Oliver stood up and started to hit Noah hard. "Help!" shouted Noah. "He's killing me." Mr. and Mrs. Sowerberry ran in and pulled Oliver away from Noah. They pulled Oliver into a dark cellar and locked the door. Mrs. Sowerberry said to Noah, "You poor boy, we must get Mr. Bumble at once." When Mr. Bumble heard what had happened, he hurried to Mr. Sowerberry's house and knocked on the door to the cellar. "Oliver, do you know who's speaking?" "Yes," said Oliver. Continued Mr. Bumble, "I understand the problem. You've given him too much meat, Mrs. Sowerberry. You've been too kind to him. Leave him in this cellar without food for a few days, then feed him only soup." That night, in the cold cellar, Oliver tried to cry himself to sleep, but he felt too angry to sleep. When the house was quiet, he went to the door and realized it was not locked. He waited until it was just light and quietly opened the door. No one was awake, and it was easy to leave the house without anyone realizing. He knew he could not stay in that place any longer. His life was unbearable. It was time for him to run away.
And now we have reached the end of the first chapter. Stay tuned for chapter 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more episodes. Goodbye.